He handed me a final check at graduation, saying I was on my own. Seconds later, my phone screamed that my secret company just hit a $5 billion valuation. He froze, terrified. I checked the account, and I realized. The black envelope hit Alara's palm with the weight of a coffin nail. It wasn't heavy, physically. It was just paper. But the gravity of it bent the light around them, sucking the air out of the manicured lawn of the university quad. The sun was too bright, the champagne too cold, the laughter of other families too jagged. Marcus Vance, the titan of industry, the man who had just watched his daughter accept a diploma with honors, didn't blink. His eyes were glacial blue, devoid of anything resembling paternal warmth. "Happy graduation, Alara," he said. His voice was smooth, like whiskey poured over broken glass. "Inside is a check for $5,000. That is the last cent you will ever receive from me. Or your mother." Alara stared at the envelope. She didn't open it. She could smell his cologne, sandalwood, and expensive indifference. "You're cutting me off," she stated. It wasn't a question. It was a confirmation of a 20-year hypothesis. "I'm setting you free," Marcus corrected, adjusting his silk tie. "You've always been soft. Dependent. Sink or swim, darling. The world doesn't care about your potential. It only cares about what you can take." He checked his watch. A Patek Philippe that cost more than her tuition. Drivers waiting. Good luck. He turned his back. The dismissal was absolute. A physical severing of the artery. Alara stood there, the black envelope trembling in her hand. Her throat tasted like copper. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She was 22, brilliant, and suddenly, destitute. Then, her phone vibrated. It wasn't a normal buzz. It was a continuous, violent spasm against her thigh. She ignored it. She was watching her father's back retreat towards the waiting limousine. The phone buzzed again. And again. A rhythmic demand for attention. She pulled it out. The screen was cracked, she couldn't afford to fix it last week, but the caller ID flashed in red, JAX, CFO. She slid the answer button, pressing the phone to her ear, her eyes still locked on her father. "Jax, not now. He just..." "Alara, shut up." Jax's voice was high, breathless, bordering on hysteria. "Are you sitting down? Tell me you're sitting down." "I'm standing in the middle of the quad." "Jax, he cut me off. He gave me $5,000 and..." "Forget the $5,000. Jax screamed. The audio cracked. The market just opened. The bell rang 10 seconds ago. Alara froze. The humidity of the afternoon vanished, replaced by a cold clarity. The project. Echo. The algorithm she had coded in her dorm room, the one Jax had quietly filed for an IPO under a shell company to avoid her father's predatory legal team. "Did we launch?" she whispered. "Launch? Alara, we didn't just launch." Across the lawn, Marcus Vance had stopped. He was reaching for the door handle of his limo. The ticker symbol hit the board, Jax said, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. "We opened at $40 a share. It's climbing." "Alara, the valuation isn't $2 million. "What is it, Jax?" "It's $5 billion. The world tilted. The grass seemed to rush up towards her face. "Billion?" The word felt foreign in her mouth. "With a B? $5.2 billion. You're the majority shareholder. Alara, you're the richest person in this state right now." A laugh bubbled up in her throat, manic and sharp. It escaped her lips before she could stop it. A loud, jagged sound that cut through the polite murmur of the graduation party. Marcus Vance stopped. He heard it. He turned around, his hand falling from the car door. He frowned, seeing his daughter, the girl he just discarded, laughing at the sky with a cracked phone pressed to her ear. "Put him on speaker," Alara whispered, a sudden, dark impulse seizing her. "Jax. Say it again. Loud." She lowered the phone. She cranked the volume. She held it out like a weapon. "We are trading at $5 billion and climbing." Jax's voice boomed through the tiny speaker, tinny but unmistakable. Heads turned. Conversations died. Marcus Vance's face went slack. The color drained from his skin, leaving him looking like a wax figure left out in the heat. He took a step back, stumbling slightly on the grass. Alara walked toward him. The black envelope was still in her left hand. The phone in her right. She felt light, untethered, dangerous. "You were right, Dad," she said, her voice steady, cutting through the silence. "The world only cares about what you can take." She dropped the black envelope at his feet. "Keep the change." Marcus looked down at the envelope, then up at her. His eyes weren't arrogant anymore. They were wide. Calculating. Then, the phone in her hand beeped. A notification. "Alara." Jax's voice came back, no longer celebrating. It was tight. Trembling. She brought the phone back to her ear. "What?" "Something's wrong," Jax hissed. "The trading, the volume is impossible. Someone is buying. Massive blocks. Someone knew we were going public today. They were waiting." "Who?" "I don't know. It's a ghost buy. But they just swallowed 20% of the float in 3 minutes. Alara, this is a hostile takeover in real time." Alara looked at her father. Marcus wasn't looking at the envelope anymore. He was looking at his own phone, which had just vibrated. He read a message. And then, he looked at her. It wasn't the look of a defeated man. It was the look of a man who had seen a ghost. "Cancel it," Marcus whispered. His voice carried across the short distance, thin and terrified. "What?" Alara frowned. He stepped forward, ignoring the crowd, ignoring the decorum. He grabbed her shoulders, his fingers digging into her graduation gown hard enough to bruise. "Cancel the IPO, Alara," he hissed, spittle flying. "You don't know what you've done. You have to kill it now. Get off me." She shoved him back. "You triggered the clause." Marcus screamed, his mask of sanity slipping. "If that company hits 5 billion, he comes back." Alara stared at him. "Who comes back?" Marcus opened his mouth to answer, but his phone rang. A simple, default ringtone. Marcus flinched as if he'd been shot. He stared at the screen. "Who is calling you, Dad?" Marcus looked up, his eyes hollow. "The man who actually owns you." The eyes in the rearview mirror didn't belong to me. They were too cold. Too wide. The pupils were dilated, swallowing the iris, black holes absorbing the frantic blur of the highway behind me. I gripped the steering wheel of my rusted Honda Civic until my knuckles turned the color of bone. Behind me, a black Lincoln Navigator was weaving through traffic, flashing its high beams. My father. "He's still tailing me, Jax," I shouted over the roar of the wind leaking through the cracked passenger window. "I'm doing 90 and he's on my bumper." "Forget him." Jax's voice was coming through the car's Bluetooth now, distorted and tinny. "Get to the bunker. The buy wall just collapsed. Whoever is buying us up just accelerated. They aren't just taking 20%, Alara. They're aiming for 51. That's impossible. We have a poison pill clause." "The clause is gone, Alara. Someone disabled it from the inside yesterday." I slammed on the brakes, taking the exit ramp for the industrial district on 2 wheels. Tires screeched, a sound like a banshee dying. The smell of burnt rubber filled the cabin, acrid and choking. "Inside?" I whispered. "It's just you and me, Jax. And the servers. Just get here." I drifted into the alleyway behind the derelict textile factory we used as an office. I didn't even kill the engine before I kicked the door open. My graduation gown caught on the door handle, ripping with a loud thwip. I left the shreds of black silk fluttering in the wind like a flag of surrender and ran inside. The office was a windowless concrete box filled with the hum of cooling fans and the smell of stale energy drinks. Jax was hunched over 3 monitors, his tie undone, his hair standing up in tuition-expensive spikes. "Look." He pointed a trembling finger at the center screen. A waterfall of red numbers. "That's the cap table," Jax said, his voice cracking. "See that block? The series of funding we thought was anonymous venture capital?" I leaned in. The glow of the screen stung my eyes. "Yeah, Archimedes Trust. They put in the seed money. They just liquidated," Jax said. "They dumped their entire holding. But not to the public market. It was a private transfer. To who? Before Jax could answer, the metal door behind us slammed open. Marcus Vance stood there. He wasn't the composed titan of industry anymore. His suit was rumpled. He was breathing hard, his chest heaving, sweat beading on his upper lip. He looked old. Don't, Marcus wheezed, pointing a shaking hand at the computer. Don't look at the buyer. I turned slowly. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with ozone and betrayal. You followed me here to tell me not to look? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. I followed you to save your life. Marcus stepped forward, desperation etching deep lines around his mouth. Shut the servers down, Alara. Pull the plug. Destroy the hard drives. If he sees the code, if he sees what Echo actually does. Who is he, Dad? I screamed. And why did you tell me I was on my own if you were just going to chase me down the highway? Marcus froze. He looked at Jax, then at me. I didn't cut you off to hurt you, he whispered. I cut you off to hide you. As long as you were my dependent, you were a target. If you were cast out, I thought he would ignore you. Who? Jax gasped. Alara. I traced the transfer. I spun back to the screen. That Archimedes Trust, the entity that had funded my company, the entity that had just sold me out, had a digital signature attached to the transfer order. It wasn't an encrypted hash. It was a name. Authorized seller, Marcus Vance. The room spun. You, I breathed. You were the investor? You gave me the seed money? 5 years ago? I had to do it anonymously, Marcus pleaded. I wanted you to build something he couldn't touch. And then you sold me, I said, the betrayal tasting like bile. You sold your shares today. To whom, Dad? I didn't sell them. Marcus yelled. They were seized. The trust was collateral for a debt I thought was paid 20 years ago. Ping. A massive notification window popped up on the center monitor, overriding the code, overriding the panic. It was a news alert from the Financial Times. Breaking news. Private jet touches down in New York. Exiled tech mogul returns after 2 decades in hiding. I looked at the photo attached to the headline. The man was tall, wearing a coat that looked like it was cut from the night sky. He had silver hair and eyes that I recognized instantly. Not because I had met him, but because I had seen those eyes in old photos in my grandfather's attic. Oh my God, Jax whispered. That's Victor Sterling. The founder of Vance Global. Your dad's old partner. No, Marcus whispered, sinking to his knees on the dirty concrete floor. Not partner. Master. The computer screen flickered. The red numbers stopped cascading. A new command prompt opened itself. Text appeared, typing itself character by character, green against the black, rhythmic and slow, like a heartbeat. Hello, Alara. Tell your father his debt is due. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I looked at Marcus. The great CEO was weeping, silent, terrified, tears running down his face. He's not coming for the money, Marcus choked out. Alara, run. Why? I asked, paralyzed by the blinking cursor. Because Echo, Marcus looked up, his eyes dead, is the only thing that can keep him alive. And he will strip you apart to get it. The speedometer of the Honda Civic trembled at 110. Beside me, the titan of industry was curled into the fetal position in the passenger seat. Marcus Vance, a man who once fired 3,000 employees before breakfast, was now clutching the dashboard with hands that looked like they belonged to a corpse. He knows the warehouse, Marcus wheezed, his eyes squeezed shut. He knows every property I own. He's probably watching us via satellite right now. Shut up, Dad, I snapped. I jerked the wheel hard to the left, taking the exit for the old wooded estates. The tires screamed, a long, agonizing wail of burning rubber. We aren't going to your properties. We're going to the aviary. Marcus's eyes snapped open. Grandfather's house? It's been condemned for a decade. It's a tomb. Exactly, I said, my foot stomping the accelerator. Ghosts are the only things you haven't sold yet. The iron gates of the aviary loomed out of the fog, rusted and twisted like arthritic fingers. I didn't slow down. I aimed for the center where the chain was weakest. Crash. Metal shrieked against metal. The car bucked violently, the windshield spider webbing further, but the gates gave way. We skidded up the overgrown driveway, gravel spraying like buckshot against the undercarriage. I killed the engine. Silence rushed in, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the ticking of the cooling motor and the ragged sound of my father's breathing. "Why here?" Marcus whispered, looking up at the rotting Victorian mansion. "Because," I said, unbuckling and shoving the door open. "Before I wrote the code for Echo, I used to play in Grandpa's study. I saw symbols in his journals. Symbols I put into the source code. I didn't wait for him. I ran up the crumbling steps, kicking the front door. It held. I kicked again, near the lock. The wood, soft with rot, splintered. Inside, the air tasted of dust and dead time. "Alara, wait." Marcus stumbled in behind me, tripping over a moth-eaten rug. I ignored him. I navigated the dark hallway by memory, the smell of old paper and pipe tobacco guiding me like a beacon. I burst into the library. It was exactly as I remembered. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. A massive oak desk. And behind the desk, the wall safe. "It's empty," Marcus said from the doorway, his voice trembling. "I cleared it out when he died." "You cleared out the money, Dad," I said, walking to the safe. "You didn't care about the scribbles." I didn't need the combination. I reached under the desk, feeling for the hidden latch Grandpa had shown me when I was 6. Push up, slide left. Click. The panel popped open. Inside, there was no cash. Just a single, leather-bound ledger. The leather was cracked, the color of dried blood. I grabbed it. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. I slammed it onto the desk and flipped it open. Equations. Pages and pages of them. Not math, logic gates. Syntax. The primitive, handwritten skeleton of an algorithm. "This is it," I whispered, tracing the ink. "This is Echo." Grandpa wrote the foundation. Marcus walked over, peering over my shoulder. His breath hitched. "No," he said, pointing to the header on the page. "Look at the date. October 14th, 1999. "That's the year I was born," I said. "And look at the project title." I looked. It wasn't called Echo. In Grandpa's jagged, dying handwriting, the project was titled, Project Immortality, Host Transfer. The room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Immortality?" I asked, the word tasting like ash. "Echo is a predictive market algorithm, Dad. It predicts stock trends." "Does it?" Marcus grabbed my shoulders, spinning me around. His eyes were wide, manic. "Is that all it does? Or does it predict behavior? Does it map human decision-making so perfectly that it can anticipate a thought before it happens?" I froze. It models neural pathways to predict market volatility. It models a mind," Marcus whispered. "Victor Sterling didn't want a stock picker. He is dying, Alara. He has a degenerative condition. He spent billions funding this research." He grabbed the book and flipped to the back. "He doesn't want the software to make money," Marcus choked out. "He wants to upload himself." "That's science fiction," I said, backing away. "That's insane." "Is it?" Marcus pointed to the final page. There was a contract glued to the inside cover. A formal agreement between my grandfather and Victor Sterling. Term, upon the successful compilation of the host code, rebranded at Echo. Payment, full forgiveness of Marcus Vance's corporate debt. Collateral, if the code is not delivered by the host's 22nd birthday. I stopped reading. My birthday was yesterday. "Keep reading," Marcus commanded, his voice breaking. Collateral, the ownership of the primary node shall revert immediately to Victor Sterling for forceful extraction. Primary node? I asked. Marcus looked at me. He looked at my hands, my eyes, the brain inside my skull that had intuitively finished a code started 20 years ago. "You didn't just write the code, Alara," Marcus whispered, tears spilling over his cheeks again. "You are the code. Grandpa didn't write it in a computer. He taught it to you. He conditioned you. The algorithm is encrypted in your neural pathways." My knees gave out. I grabbed the desk for support. The buzzing in my head wasn't panic anymore. It was data. He's not coming for the hard drives, I realized, the horror cold and absolute. No, Marcus said. Creak. The sound came from the hallway. A floorboard groaning under weight. We both froze. The dust motes in the library stood still. Marcus, a voice drifted in from the dark corridor. It was rich, deep, and terrifyingly calm. You always did have a flair for the dramatic. Marcus shoved me. Hard. The window, he hissed. Go. Dad. Go. Marcus turned toward the door, straightening his rumpled suit. He picked up a heavy brass paperweight from the desk. I scrambled onto the window seat, fumbling with the latch. It was rusted shut. The library door swung open. A figure stood there. He leaned on a cane made of polished black wood. His face was gaunt, the skin pulled tight over sharp bones, but his eyes, those silver eyes, were burning with a hunger that wasn't human. Victor Sterling smiled. Hello, little node, he said, looking past my father, straight at me. I believe you have my immortality inside your head. I smashed the glass with my elbow. Pain exploded in my arm. Run. Marcus screamed, charging at the man who owned us both. I tumbled out into the cold night air, landing hard on the overgrown grass. Inside the room above me, I heard a sickening thud. Then a scream. Then silence. I scrambled to my feet and ran into the woods, the darkness swallowing me whole, while the sound of Victor's cane tapping on the floorboards echoed behind me. Tap. 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 He wasn't chasing. He was hurting. The brambles tore at Alara's skin like angry lovers. She didn't feel it. Adrenaline was a narcotic, numbing the lacerations on her arms and the thudding ache in her ankle. She scrambled up the embankment, the wet earth sliding under her boots, until her hand slapped against the cold, rough asphalt of the old service road. Silence. No engine noise behind her. No tapping cane. Just the wind howling through the pine trees, carrying the phantom echo of her father's scream. Thud. The sound replayed in her mind, a loop tape of horror. Had Victor killed him? She fumbled for her phone. The screen was a spiderweb of cracks, shards of glass digging into her thumb. 1 bar of signal. She dialed the only number left. Jax, she gasped as the line connected. Pick up. Pick up. Alara? Jax's voice was crisp. Too calm. Where are you? The GPS on your phone is jumping all over the grid. He found us. Victor Sterling. He's at the aviary. He has Dad. She choked on a sob, forcing it down. I need the police. I need. No police, Jax cut in sharply. Sterling owns the precinct, Alara. You call 911, you're calling his private security. Then what do I do? She spun around, watching the darkness of the tree line. Every shadow looked like a man with a cane. Come to the office, Jax said. The glass room. I've triggered an emergency board meeting. Section 4 of the bylaws. If we declare the company under hostile duress, we can freeze the assets. Including the IP. Including you. Freeze me? It puts you in legal stasis. Sterling can't touch you without triggering a federal investigation. It's a shield, Alara. But I need your biometric signature on the motion. Now. I'm on the North Road. Mile marker 4. I'm 5 minutes away. Stay low. The headquarters of Echo was a monolith of steel and glass, piercing the night sky of the financial district. It stood empty, a ghost ship of ambition. Jax led her into the conference center on the top floor, the glass room. It was a fishbowl suspended 60 stories in the air, walls made of floor-to-ceiling transparent panes. The city lights sprawled below, a grid of indifference. Sit, Jax said, sliding a bottle of water across the obsidian table. Alara collapsed into the leather chair. Her graduation dress was ruined, mud-stained and torn. Her arm was wrapped in a crude bandage made from her sash. Where is the board? She asked, looking around the empty room. You said there was a meeting. There is, Jax said. He walked to the window, his back to her. He was fixing his cufflinks. But the board isn't coming. They voted by proxy. Okay. Whatever. Give me the document. Alara reached for the tablet on the table. Let's freeze the assets. She looked at the screen. It wasn't a motion for legal stasis. Voluntary abdication of executive control and transfer of intellectual property. Beneficiary, the Sterling Group. The air in the room vanished. The hum of the AC unit suddenly sounded like a roar. Alara looked up. Jax? You sent me the wrong file. Jax turned around. He wasn't the frantic, caffeinated kid she had shared dorm room pizzas with. He wasn't the nervous CFO who hyperventilated over tax forms. His posture was perfect. His face was a mask of bored efficiency. No error, Alara, he said softly. Sign it. You're working for him, she whispered. The betrayal hit harder than the fall from the window. It was a cold knife between the ribs. How long? Since the beginning, Jax said, walking over to pour himself a drink. Who do you think suggested the IPO date? Who do you think disabled the poison pill? Sterling didn't find us, Alara. I guided him in. Why? Her voice broke. We built this. You and me. You built it, Jax corrected. I just watched. And I realized something. You're brilliant, Alara. But you're a liability. Your father knew it too. He tapped the table. A holographic projection sprang to life in the center of the room. It was a video recording. Grainy. Old. It showed Marcus Vance, younger, sharper, sitting in this very room years before Echo existed. He was talking to a shadowy figure. She's becoming unstable, Marcus's voice said on the recording. The code in her head. It's making her erratic. If she breaks, the investment is lost. Then what do you propose? The shadow asked. We verify the data, Marcus said, taking a sip of scotch. And once the upload is complete, we discard the shell. The recording flickered and died. Alara sat frozen. The silence was absolute. Discard the shell, she repeated. That's me. Your father sold you out before you even knew how to code, Jax said, leaning over the table, his eyes dead. He didn't fight Sterling tonight to save you. He fought him because he wanted a better price. Jax slid a heavy fountain pen across the glass surface. It spun, coming to a stop pointing at her heart. Sterling is on his way up the elevator, Jax said, checking his watch. He has your father. If you sign this, Marcus lives. If you don't, well, the shell gets broken, and the old man gets liquidated. Alara looked at the pen. She looked at the glass walls. There was nowhere to run. They were 60 stories up, and the sharks were in the room. You think I'm just code, Alara whispered, her hand trembling as she reached for the pen. Aren't you? Jax smirked. She gripped the pen. Not to sign. No, she said, her breathing shifting, the rhythm of her heart syncing with the hum of the servers in the floor below. I'm the virus. The elevator doors dinged open. Victor Sterling stepped out, dragging a bloody, unconscious Marcus Vance by the collar of his shirt. Time's up, Victor smiled. The sound of Marcus Vance hitting the floor wasn't a thud. It was a wet, sickening crack, the sound of a marionette whose strings had been cut by a butcher knife. Blood, dark and viscous, began to pool on the pristine white carpet of the glass room, contrasting sharply with the city lights glittering 60 stories below. Dad. Alara lunged, but Jax caught her arm. His grip was surprisingly strong, his fingernails digging into her bicep. Stay, Jax commanded, his voice devoid of the nervous energy that had defined him for 4 years. He's breathing. For now. Victor Sterling stepped over the body of the fallen titan. He adjusted his cufflink, then leaned heavily on his black cane. He looked at Alara not with malice, but with the clinical curiosity of a biologist dissecting a frog. Sentimental, Victor murmured, glancing at Marcus. He fought quite hard in the car. Broke my driver's nose. He kept screaming that the deal was void. Victor limped toward the table, picking up the tablet Alara had refused to sign. But the deal is never void, is it, Alara? Victor smiled, his teeth too white, too perfect. Contracts are the only magic that exists in this world. Ink on paper. Blood on floor. You want Echo, Alara said, her voice shaking but her eyes locked on his. Take the code. Take the servers. Just let us go. Victor laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound, like sandpaper on bone. My dear child. You still don't understand. He tapped his temple with a long, skeletal finger. The servers are just storage. The processor is you. He motioned to Jax. Show her. Jax tapped a command on the conference table. The holographic screens shifted. A 3D medical scan appeared. It was a brain. Her brain. Your grandfather didn't just teach you logic puzzles, Jax explained, sounding like he was presenting a quarterly report. He used a conditioning protocol called recursive neural mapping. Every time you solved a coding problem, every time you predicted a market trend, you weren't just thinking. You were physically altering the synaptic pathways of your frontal cortex. Alara stared at the glowing blue image of her own mind. You aren't the CEO, Victor whispered, leaning close enough that she could smell peppermint and decay on his breath. You are the hard drive. If I want the algorithm, I have to extract it. And unfortunately, the extraction process burns out the host. The room spun. The voluntary abdication document wasn't a resignation. It was a death certificate. But a wheeze came from the floor. Marcus Vance was trying to push himself up. His face was a mask of blood, one eye swollen shut. But Marcus rasped again, spitting a tooth onto the carpet. The contract had a survivorship clause. Victor paused. He looked down at the broken man. A clause I deleted from the digital archive 10 years ago, Marcus. It doesn't exist. It exists, Marcus choked out, dragging himself toward the table leg. In the physical copy. The one you didn't burn. Victor's face twitched. A microscopic crack in the porcelain mask. I burned the library, Victor snarled. I watched the aviary burn tonight. Not the aviary, Marcus groaned, pulling himself into a sitting position against the table leg. He looked at Alara, his good eye filled with a desperate, terrifying intensity. Alara, graduation. What? Alara blinked, tears stinging her eyes. Why do you think? I was so cruel. Marcus coughed, blood flecking his shirt. Why did I do it publicly? Why did I make sure everyone heard me say, you are on your own? Alara stared at him. The memory of the sun, the envelope, the humiliation. To push you away, she whispered. To legally sever the tie, Marcus corrected, his voice gaining a shred of strength. The survivorship clause. It stated that if you were no longer a dependent of the Vance estate, if you were an independent entity with your own valuation, then the host transfer could not be forced without a federal warrant. Silence slammed into the room. Jax looked at Victor. Victor looked at Marcus. I made her a billionaire, Marcus whispered, a bloody grin spreading across his face. I triggered the IPO. I funded the buyout myself to drive the price to $5 billion. Not to sell her out. But to make her too big to eat. Victor's face went purple. He raised his cane, the heavy silver handle gleaming under the fluorescent lights. You insolent, bankrupt little. Stop. Alara screamed. She slammed her hand down on the glass table. You can't touch him, Alara said, her voice turning into ice. And you can't touch me. Victor lowered the cane slowly. And why is that? Because, Alara said, pointing to the tablet she had been holding. The screen wasn't showing the contract anymore. It was showing a progress bar. 100%. While you were monologuing about my brain, Alara said, I uploaded a packet to the SEC database. It's a whistleblower complaint attached to the Echo source code. Jax's eyes widened. He scrambled to his laptop. She did. It's pending verification. If my heart rate monitor stops, Alara said, lifting her wrist to show her smartwatch, or if my father dies, the packet decrypts. Every illegal trade, every offshore account, and the specifics of this extraction technology goes public. You won't get my brain, Victor. You'll get a life sentence. Victor stared at her. For 10 seconds, nobody breathed. Then, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out. He read the text. He looked at Alara, and for the first time, there was respect in his eyes. Mutually assured destruction, Victor mused. Your grandfather would be proud. He stepped back. Jax, get the car. We're leaving. Leaving? Jax stammered. But the IPO. Is frozen, Victor snapped. We can't extract her while the SEC is watching. We have to do this the hard way. He turned to Alara. You bought yourself time, little node. Maybe 24 hours before my lawyers dismantle that complaint. Victor leaned down, whispering into Marcus's ear. And Marcus? That physical contract you mentioned? The one that proves she's safe? I know where you hid it. I'm going to get it. And then, I'm going to burn it. Victor straightened up and walked to the elevator. Jax followed, casting one last, unreadable look at Alara. The doors closed. Alara dropped to her knees beside her father. He was shivering, going into shock. Dad, she cried, ripping the hem of her dress to press against his head wound. You saved me. You really saved me. Marcus grabbed her wrist. His grip was weak, his skin clammy. Listen to me, he whispered, his eyes rolling back. Victor lied. He doesn't know where the contract is. Only I do. Where is it? Alara asked. I'll go get it. Marcus pulled her closer. His voice was a thread, barely audible over the thrum of the building. It's not in a safe. It's not in a bank. He coughed, blood bubbling on his lips. It's inside the server room of my old company. The one Victor seized. You have to break in, Alara. You have to break into the lion's den. Which server? The offline unit, Marcus whispered, his eyes closing. Project Lazarus. His hand went limp. Alara checked his pulse. It was faint. Fluttering. She looked out the glass walls at the city. Somewhere out there, Victor was already moving. She stood up. She wiped the blood from her hands onto her ruined dress. She wasn't a student anymore. She wasn't a billionaire. She was a thief. And she had a heist to plan. The rain didn't wash the city clean, it just made the grime slicker. Alara wiped a mixture of rainwater and grease from her forehead, her fingers leaving dark streaks on her pale skin. The service entrance to the old Vance Global Data Center was a jagged maw of rusted steel, forced open by a crowbar in desperation. Inside, the air was recycled, stale, cold, and smelling of ozone and dead ambitions. Keep pressure on it, Alara hissed, her voice echoing in the cavernous server farm. Marcus Vance leaned heavily against a server rack, a bundle of bloody graduation silk pressed to his side. His face was gray, the color of wet cement. He looked less like a titan of industry and more like a ghost haunting his own graveyard. Row G, Marcus wheezed, pointing with a trembling hand into the darkness. The Lazarus unit. It's air-gapped. Not connected to the grid. Victor couldn't wipe it remotely. Alara moved. She didn't walk, she stalked. Her heels were long gone, discarded in the alley. In her stocking feet, she moved silently over the raised floor tiles. Row G was a graveyard of obsolete tech. Massive black towers, humming with a low, menacing vibration. Here, she whispered. She pulled the connection cable from her bag, a heavily modified interface she'd built for Echo. She jammed it into the port. Sparks flew. A harsh blue light bathed her face. It's encrypted, Alara called out, her fingers flying across her laptop keyboard. The sound was like gunfire, rapid, rhythmic, violent. AES-256 rapping A. Dad, is this a biological lock? Biometric, Marcus coughed from the shadows. Retinal scan. My retina. You're 20 feet away and bleeding out. I can't drag you here. Bypass it, Marcus groaned. Use the override code. Your birthday. Alara typed it in. October 14th, 99. Access denied. It didn't work. Try the day your mother died, Marcus whispered. The pain in his voice wasn't physical anymore. Alara paused. Her fingers hovered over the keys. She typed the date. The day the police said it was a car accident. The day her father stopped smiling. Access granted. The screen flooded with green text. Files unspooled like ancient scrolls. Project Lazarus, archive. I'm in, she breathed. Scanning for the physical asset location, wait. A file caught her eye. It wasn't a location. It was a scanned PDF. Master_agreement_signed_1999.pdf. She opened it. It was the document Marcus had told her about. The paper that proved her independence. She scrolled frantically, looking for the survivorship clause. She found it. Paragraph 14, Section B. In the event of the host achieving independent financial sovereignty. I found it, Dad, she cried out, relief washing over her like a tidal wave. It's here. Paragraph 14. We just need to print this and get it to the SEC. Read the addendum, Marcus choked out. What? Bottom of the page. The fine print. Alara scrolled down. Her eyes narrowed. The handwriting at the bottom was different. It was jagged. Urgent. Addendum, the survivorship clause is null and void if the host utilizes the IPO source code to achieve said sovereignty. The breath left her lungs. You knew, she whispered, turning to look at the dark shape of her father. You knew using IPO for the IPO would trap me. I thought. Marcus's voice broke. I thought if you got big enough, he wouldn't care about the contract. I thought money was the only law he respected. You gambled with my life, she spat. I tried to cheat the devil, Alara. Marcus screamed, the sound tearing his throat. Look at the rest. Look at what I signed. She looked back at the screen. Below the addendum, there was a list of deliverables. Vance Global Equity, 100%. IPO source code. The biological vessel, subject, Alara Vance. Note, subject is to be prepared for total neural overwrite. Current consciousness is deemed expendable. Expendable, Alara read the word. It felt heavy, final. I'm not a person to him. I'm a hard drive formatted to be wiped. There's more, Marcus whispered. The video file. The one Grandpa made. Alara saw it. A video icon labeled do_not_delete.avi. She clicked it. The screen flickered. A face appeared. It was her grandfather, Arthur Vance. He looked younger, but terrified. He was sitting in the aviary library. If you are watching this, Arthur said, his voice trembling, then I have failed. And Marcus has failed. Arthur looked off camera. There was a shadow on the wall behind him. A man leaning on a cane. Speak, Arthur, a voice from off camera commanded. Deep. Smooth. Victor. I hereby transfer guardianship of the subject, Alara, to Victor Sterling, Arthur recited, tears streaming down his face. In exchange for the preservation of the family legacy. And, the voice goaded. And I acknowledge, Arthur sobbed, that Victor Sterling is the rightful father. Alara froze. The server room went silent. What? She whispered. On the screen, the camera panned. Victor Sterling stepped into the frame. He placed a hand on Arthur's shoulder. Not just legally, Arthur, Victor said to the camera, his silver eyes staring across 2 decades, piercing right through the screen into Alara's soul. Genetically. Alara stopped breathing. We needed a mind capable of holding the code, Victor said on the recording. Your son, Marcus, was too average. Too human. So we used my genetic material for the donor. The girl is mine, Arthur. She has my mind. That is why she will survive the transfer. The video cut to black. Alara stared at her reflection in the dark monitor. The silver eyes. The cold logic. The ruthlessness she had felt earlier in the glass room. It wasn't learned behavior. It was inheritance. Dad? Alara turned slowly. Tell me it's a lie. Marcus didn't answer. His head was slumped on his chest. A pool of blood had widened beneath him, touching her stocking feet. Dad. She scrambled over to him, checking for a pulse. It was there, but faint. Thready. Then, the servers around them changed. The blue lights turned red. A slow, rhythmic clapping echoed from the entrance of the server room. Clap. 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 Alara stood up, shielding her father's body with her own. Victor Sterling stood in the doorway. He wasn't limping anymore. He looked energized. Triumphant. Family reunions are always so messy, Victor said, stepping into the red light. You, Alara said, the word vibrating with a rage she had never felt before. You're my father? Biologically? Yes, Victor shrugged. But don't expect a birthday card. I didn't create a daughter, Alara. I created a vessel. He raised his phone. I just blocked your SEC complaint. My lawyers found a loophole in the Whistleblower Act. Something about stolen property. He smiled. You are the stolen property, my dear. And I am here to repossess. Alara backed up, hitting the server rack. She glanced at the screen behind her. The download of the contract was at 99%. You can't take me, she said, her hand reaching behind her back, finding a loose power cable. High voltage. Oh, I think I can, Victor said softly. Look at your hands, Alara. Look at them shake. That's my tremor. That's our disease. You have maybe 6 months before your brain degrades naturally. I am the only one who can save you, by becoming you. He took a step forward. Now, Victor held out his hand. Come to Daddy. Alara grabbed the high-voltage cable. She looked at the sprinkler system directly above Victor's head. Go to hell, she said. And she jammed the live wire into the metal server rack. The world didn't end with a bang, it ended with a zzzzzt. The arc flash was brighter than the sun. A tendril of pure, jagged lightning leapt from the server rack, seduced by the copper in the cable Alara held, and kissed the water erupting from the ceiling. Gravity failed. The air turned into a concussive hammer, slamming Alara backward into the steel doorframe. Smell of ozone. Burnt hair. Boiling water. Then, the screaming started. Not her father. Victor. Alara blinked, her vision swimming in purple spots. Through the curtain of falling water and rising steam, she saw the silhouette of Victor Sterling. He was convulsing, his cane clattering across the wet tiles as the electrified floor turned his own trap into a chair. It wasn't a lethal dose, the breakers had tripped instantly, but it was enough to turn his nervous system into a grand mal seizure. Move, Alara commanded her legs. They felt like lead. She crawled over the wet concrete, avoiding the metal floor tiles. She grabbed Marcus by the collar of his ruined suit. Dad. Up. Marcus was a sack of wet cement. His eyes were open but unfocused, glazing over with the milky sheen of shock. Leave me, he gargled, blood frothing at the corner of his mouth. Shut up, she hissed, adrenaline momentarily overriding the exhaustion. She hauled him up, her muscles screaming, tearing fibers. She kicked the emergency exit bar. The cool, damp night air hit them like a physical blow. They tumbled out into the alleyway, landing in a heap of trash bags and dirty rainwater. Behind them, the fire alarm wailed, a mechanical banshee signaling the death of the server farm. Car, Alara gasped, scanning the alley. We need a car. No time, Marcus wheezed. He grabbed her wrist. His hand was freezing. Look at me. Alara looked. The street lamp above flickered, casting a sickly yellow light on his face. He was gray. Not pale, gray. The life was leaking out of him faster than the rain was washing the blood away. He's right, Marcus whispered, his voice a wet rattle. About the genetics. Don't talk about that, Alara sobbed, pressing her hands against the wound in his side. We're going to a hospital. I'm not your father, Alara, Marcus said, his eyes locking onto hers with a sudden, terrifying clarity. But I tried to be. In the end. I tried. Dad, please. Listen. He squeezed her wrist, his nails digging in. Victor has the police. He has the hospitals. You go there, you wake up in his lab. Then where do I go? She screamed at the empty alley. The enemy, of my enemy, Marcus choked. Julian. Alara froze. Julian? Julian Thorne? My ex. He didn't leave you because he was bored, Marcus whispered, tears mixing with the rain on his cheeks. I forced him out. I threatened him. Because he was getting too close to the secret. Marcus reached into his pocket. He pulled out a key. An old, physical brass key. Safety deposit box. Grand Central Station. Box 404. What's in the box, Dad? The leverage, Marcus smiled weakly. Julian knows how to use it. Go to him. Beg him. His grip slackened. Dad? Marcus Vance looked past her, up at the rain falling from the black sky. Tell him. I'm sorry I broke his nose, Marcus murmured. Then, his chest stopped heaving. The light in his eyes vanished, replaced by the reflection of the street lamp. The titan of industry was gone. Alara sat there in the mud, holding the hand of the man who had bought her, raised her, sold her, and saved her. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. The pain was too big for sound. It was a black hole opening in the center of her chest, swallowing everything, her grief, her fear, her humanity. Tremble. She looked at her own hand. The one holding the brass key. It was shaking. Not from the cold. Not from the grief. It was a rhythmic, neurological tremor. The ring finger twitching uncontrollably against the palm. That's my tremor, Victor had said. That's our disease. 6 months, she whispered to the corpse of her father. I have 6 months. Headlights swept across the alley entrance. Tires screeched on the wet pavement. Alara scrambled back, pressing herself against the brick wall, pulling Marcus's body into the shadows. A black SUV idled at the mouth of the alley. The window rolled down. It wasn't the police. It wasn't Victor. The man in the driver's seat had a jawline sharp enough to cut glass and eyes that burned with a mixture of hatred and recognition. He wore a tuxedo, the collar unbuttoned, as if he'd just left a gala to come inspect a murder scene. Julian Thorne. He looked at the scene, the fire alarm blaring, the smoke billowing from the door, the girl covered in blood and grease, the dead tycoon in the trash. He didn't look surprised. Get in, Julian said. His voice was cold, flat. Julian, Alara stammered, standing up, her legs shaking. My dad, he's dead, Julian finished for her. I know. I've been tracking his vitals on a hacked Echo feed for the last 20 minutes. You hacked Echo? Get in the car, Alara, Julian revved the engine. Victor's security team is 30 seconds out. If they find you, they lobotomize you. Alara looked at her father's body one last time. I can't just leave him. He's empty, Julian said, unlocking the passenger door. You're the one full of $5 billion worth of code. Alara clenched her jaw. She tightened her grip on the brass key. She stepped over Marcus Vance, leaving him to the rain, and slid into the leather seat of the enemy's car. As she slammed the door, Julian floored it. The SUV tore out of the alley just as 3 armored vans boxed in the entrance. Alara looked at Julian. He hadn't aged a day since college, but his eyes were harder. Crueler. You knew, she said. About the genetics. About everything. Julian didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on the road, weaving through traffic at 90 miles an hour. I knew your father was a monster, Julian said. I didn't know you were a science experiment. He reached into the glove box and tossed a folder onto her lap. Open it. Alara opened the folder. It was a medical report. Dated yesterday. Subject, Alara Vance. Status, active degradation. Estimated time to cortical failure, 48 hours. Alara stopped breathing. Victor lied to you, Julian said softly. You don't have 6 months, Alara. You have 2 days. Unless we cut the code out of your head. How, she whispered. Julian smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We have to crash the system, he said. We have to kill the host. The silence in the speeding SUV was heavier than the G-force pressing Alara into the leather seat. She stared at the medical file on her lap. The words swam in and out of focus, distorted by the rhythmic throbbing behind her eyes. Cortical failure. 48 hours. She touched her nose. Her fingers came away wet and red. Don't wipe it on the upholstery, Julian said, his eyes glued to the rearview mirror. That's Italian leather. I'm dying, Julian, Alara said, her voice sounding hollow, like it was coming from a different room. And you're worried about your car seats. I'm worried about the resale value, he corrected sharply. He took a hard right, the tires biting into the asphalt. And you aren't dying. You're overclocking. Your brain is a processor running $5 billion of data without a cooling fan. You're melting. He pulled the car into an underground garage that smelled of damp concrete and money. The steel gate slammed shut behind them, cutting off the city. Get out. Alara stumbled. Her legs felt like water. Julian didn't offer a hand. He walked ahead, punching a code into a private elevator. You said you have to kill the host, Alara said, leaning against the cold metal wall of the elevator as it shot upward. What does that mean? It means exactly what it says. Julian loosened his bow tie, the first sign of discomfort he'd shown all night. The code is rooted in your autonomic nervous system. It feeds on your biorhythms. To extract it without frying your synapses, we have to zero out the voltage. The doors opened. It wasn't a living room. It was a surgical theater disguised as a penthouse. Chrome surfaces. Monitors. A solitary, terrifyingly sterile medical chair in the center of a room that overlooked the skyline. You want to stop my heart, Alara realized, the blood draining from her face. Clinically? Yes, Julian walked to a cabinet, pulling out a vial of clear liquid. For 3 minutes. Just enough to trick the algorithm into a dormant state so I can scrape it onto a server. And then? And then I resuscitate you. You wake up broke, brain damaged maybe, but alive. He turned, holding a syringe. And I walk away with the biggest IPO in history. Alara laughed. A jagged, broken sound. Of course, she stepped back, bumping into a glass side table. You aren't saving me. You're salvaging the cargo. I'm a businessman, Alara. Not a knight. You're a traitor, she screamed. The anger flared hot, momentarily burning away the brain fog. My father said he forced you to leave me. But that was a lie, wasn't it? Julian paused. The needle hovered in the air. He looked at her. Really looked at her. For a second, the mask of the ruthless CEO slipped, revealing a boy who had once sat on a dorm room floor with her, dreaming of the future. Marcus didn't force me, Julian said softly. He bought me. The air left the room. What? He offered me $2 million to walk away, Julian said, his voice flat, devoid of apology. I was 22. I was hungry. And you were just a girl I liked. He took a step closer. I took the check, Alara. That's how I built Thorn Industries. I sold you for seed money. Alara felt the room tilt. The betrayal wasn't fresh, it was ancient, a rot that had been festering for years. Her father used her. Victor bred her. Julian sold her. She was surrounded by men who saw her as currency. I hate you, she whispered. Good, Julian said, checking the dosage in the syringe. Hate keeps the blood pressure up. It makes the veins easier to find. I have leverage, Alara blurted out. She reached into her pocket. Her trembling fingers produced the brass key. Box 404. Grand Central. Julian froze. His eyes narrowed, locking onto the key. Where did you get that? My father gave it to me before he died. He said you knew how to use it. Julian lowered the syringe. He walked over, snatching the key from her hand. He held it up to the light. The doomsday drive, he muttered. I thought Marcus destroyed it. What is it? Evidence, Julian said, a dark smile touching his lips. Not just against Victor. Against everyone. The SEC, the Senate, the offshore banks. Marcus recorded everything for 30 years. If this key opens what I think it opens, it's not just leverage, Alara. It's a nuclear bomb. He looked at her, his calculation shifting. If we release this, the market crashes. Echo becomes worthless. Victor goes to prison, but so do I. So does everyone with a net worth over 10 figures. Do it, Alara challenged. Burn it all down. I can't, Julian said. I like my penthouse. He turned back to the medical chair. Sit down, Alara. We're doing the procedure. I take the code. You live. And I throw this key in the river. No. Alara lunged for the key. She was slow. Clumsy. Her body was failing. Julian caught her wrist effortlessly, twisting it behind her back. He shoved her face first onto the cold leather of the surgical chair. Stop fighting, he hissed close to her ear. You have 24 hours before your brain liquefies. This is the only way. Let go of me. Crash. The panoramic window of the penthouse, 60 floors up, shattered inward. It wasn't a bird. It wasn't the wind. A drone, sleek and black, shaped like a hawk, smashed through the reinforced glass. It hovered in the center of the room, rotors screaming. A green laser grid scanned the room. It hit Julian. Then it hit Alara. A voice projected from the drone. Distorted. Digital. Target located. Victor, Julian cursed, releasing Alara and diving behind the surgical console. I thought you said this place was secure. Alara screamed, rolling off the chair as glass rained down. Surrender the host, the drone boomed. Or termination protocol initiates in T-10 seconds. Julian popped up, grabbing a handgun from under the counter. He fired 3 shots. Bang. 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 Sparks flew from the drone, but it didn't fall. Instead, the drone's underbelly opened. It didn't drop a bomb. It dropped a gas canister. Hiss. Thick, yellow smoke began to fill the room instantly. Neurotoxin. Julian shouted, covering his mouth with his sleeve. Don't breathe it. It paralyzes the motor cortex. He grabbed Alara, dragging her toward the heavy steel door of the panic room disguised as a closet. Get in. He shoved her inside. But before he could follow, the drone dove. It collided with Julian's chest, the impact knocking him backward into the cloud of yellow gas. Julian. He looked at her from the floor. His eyes were already glazing over, his limbs going slack as the toxin hit his bloodstream. He tried to lift the gun, but his fingers wouldn't obey. Close the door, he slurred. I can't leave you. You have the key, Julian gasped, his body seizing up. Close it. He kicked the door release panel with his last ounce of strength. The heavy steel door slammed shut. Clang. Alara was alone in the dark. Outside, she heard the drone landing. And then, the terrifying sound of the elevator pinging. Someone was coming up. She huddled in the corner of the panic room, clutching the brass key so hard it cut her skin. She was trapped in a steel box. Her brain was dying. Her savior was paralyzed. And the monster was at the door. Then, she saw it. In the corner of the panic room, illuminated by the faint red emergency light. A computer terminal. An old, dusty interface connected to the building's internal network. She crawled toward it. Her vision was blurring, purple static eating the edges of her sight. She didn't need to fight Victor with guns. She didn't need to fight him with money. She was the code. She placed her hands on the keyboard. Okay, Dad, she whispered, blood dripping from her nose onto the keys. Let's see what this inheritance can really do. The cursor on the black screen didn't blink. It pulsated. It beat in perfect synchronization with the aneurysm expanding in Alara's frontal lobe. Thump thump. Thump thump. She didn't feel her fingers hitting the plastic keys of the old terminal. The sensation of touch was gone. Her hands were just extensions of the motherboard, bridging the gap between biological failure and digital godhood. Outside the 3 inches of reinforced steel, the sound of a plasma torch hissed. Victor was cutting the door down. Open the door, Alara, Victor's voice came through the intercom, smooth, patient, like a teacher waiting for a tardy student. There is no signal inside that box. You can't call for help. You can't upload to the cloud. Alara wiped a fresh stream of blood from her upper lip. It smeared across her chin, hot and metallic. I'm not calling for help, she typed, her voice a whisper that the intercom didn't pick up. I'm calling the house. She hit enter. The command override _building _sys _root flashed green. The code inside her head Echo wasn't just a prediction model. It was a pattern recognition engine. It saw the architecture of the penthouse's smart grid not as wires and switches, but as a nervous system waiting to be hijacked. Access granted. She closed her eyes. She could see the building. The elevators moving like blood cells. The HVAC system breathing like lungs. The automated security turrets sleeping in the ceiling. She woke them up. Click. Outside the panic room, the hissing of the torch stopped. Sir? A voice. One of Victor's mercenaries. The drone. It just rebooted. Ignore it, Victor snapped. Cut the door. Sir, it's locking onto us. Alara typed one word, purge. The sound of gunfire erupted in the penthouse. Not from guns held by hands, but from the ceiling mounts and the rebooted drone. The noise was deafening, a chaotic symphony of shattering glass, ricocheting bullets, and men screaming. Alara stood up. The world tilted violently to the left. She grabbed the terminal for support, waiting for the dizziness to pass. It didn't. She walked to the door. She placed her hand on the release lever. "Don't do it," a voice in her head whispered. "Stay here. Die here." She pulled the lever. The heavy steel door swung open. The penthouse was a war zone. Smoke choked the air. 2 mercenaries lay motionless near the shattered window. The drone was hovering in the center of the room, its barrel smoking, scanning for targets. It turned toward Alara. The red laser dot hit her forehead. It didn't fire. It recognized the code. It dipped its nose, a mechanical bow to its new master. "Julian," she rasped. She found him where she left him. The neurotoxin had done its work. He was sprawled on the marble floor, his eyes wide and unblinking, staring at the ceiling. He was conscious, trapped in a dead body. Alara knelt beside him. The smoke swirled around them. "I can't carry you," she whispered, her voice cracking. "And I can't stay." Julian's eyes darted to the right. Toward his hand. The gun was still there. Alara picked it up. It was heavy. Cold. "You sold me for seed money," she said, looking down at him. "You let them turn me into this." Julian's eyes watered. A single tear tracked through the yellow dust on his face. It wasn't an apology. It was fear. "I should kill you," Alara said, the gun trembling in her hand. The tremor was getting worse. It would be justice. She aimed at his chest. The drone hovered closer, waiting for the command. Alara tightened her finger on the trigger. Then, she lowered the gun. She tucked it into the waistband of her ruined dress. "But I'm not my father," she whispered. "And I'm not yours." She leaned down, fishing the car keys from his pocket. "If you survive the toxin," she said close to his ear, "don't come after me. Next time, I won't miss." She stood up. "Where is Victor?" she asked the room. The drone spun, projecting a holographic map of the building. A red dot was moving rapidly down the emergency stairwell. He had run. The coward had run. Alara walked to the elevator. She didn't press the button. The doors opened automatically before she even reached them. She stepped inside. "Ground floor," she said. "Express." Grand Central Station at 3 a.m. was a cathedral of silence. The celestial ceiling, painted with constellations, looked down on the empty concourse. Alara walked toward the bank of lockers near the lower-level tracks, her footsteps echoing like gunshots on the marble floor. She was running on fumes. Her vision was tunneling, the edges of the world dissolving into black static. Every heartbeat felt like a hammer striking a bruise. Box 404. There it was. An old, brass-fronted box in a row of forgotten storage units. She fumbled for the key. Her hands were shaking so violently she dropped it twice. "Come on," she sobbed, picking it up from the dirty floor. "Come on." She jammed the key into the lock. It turned with a satisfying click. She pulled the small door open. Inside, there was no hard drive. No stack of cash. No dossier of incriminating photos. There was a single object. A vintage cassette player. A Walkman from the 90s. And a tape inside labeled, Lullaby. Alara frowned. She pulled the player out. She put the headphones over her ears. Her hands trembling, she pressed play. Static. Then, a voice. Not her father's. Not Victor's. A woman's voice. Soft. Melodic. "Hello, Alara. If you're listening to this, then Marcus actually did it. He saved you." Alara slid down the wall, sitting on the cold floor of the station. "My name is Sarah," the voice said. "I was the lead geneticist on Project Immortality. And I was the surrogate." Alara stopped breathing. "Victor thinks the code is stored in your frontal cortex," the woman continued. "He thinks he needs to extract it to survive. He's wrong. I changed the syntax before you were born." The tape hissed. The code isn't in your brain, baby. It's in your blood. It's encoded in your DNA. Every time you solve a problem, every time you predict the market, you aren't processing data. You're synthesizing a protein. Alara looked at her arm. The bandage from graduation was soaked through. You are the cure, Sarah's voice broke. Victor is dying of a genetic failure. Your blood fixes it. But if he extracts it, he drains you dry. A pause. But there's a failsafe. A poison pill I hid in your genes. If your heart rate exceeds 200 beats per minute, if you are pushed to the absolute brink of adrenaline, the protein inverts. Alara's heart was hammering. She checked her watch. 180 BPM. It becomes a neuroweapon, the voice whispered. A biological virus. If he tries to take your blood then, it won't heal him. It will erase him. Instantaneously. The tape clicked off. Alara sat in the silence of Grand Central. She wasn't a hard drive. She was a trap. A biological bomb waiting to detonate. Well, a voice echoed across the concourse. Alara looked up. Victor Sterling stood at the top of the marble staircase. He was flanked by 10 men in tactical gear. He looked disheveled, burned, and absolutely furious. I'm tired of running, daughter, Victor shouted, his voice booming off the vaulted ceiling. Give me the blood. Or I take it from your corpse. Alara stood up. She pulled the headphones off her neck and dropped them. She looked at her watch. 185 BPM. She looked at the tactical team. 10 guns pointed at her chest. She smiled. A smile that was all teeth and blood. You want my blood, Victor? She shouted back. Come and get it. She reached into her waistband and pulled out Julian's gun. She didn't aim at Victor. She aimed at the ceiling. At the massive crystal chandelier hanging directly above the center of the concourse. But first, she whispered to herself. Let's get that heart rate up. She fired. The chandelier didn't fall like rain, it fell like judgment. Thousands of crystals, weighing 2 tons, sheared from the ceiling of Grand Central. Gravity took the reins. The tactical team looked up, their night vision goggles blinding them with the sudden flare of the braking fixture. Crash. The sound was a physical punch to the gut. The floor of the concourse buckled. Shards of crystal exploded outward like shrapnel, a glittering cloud of razor blades. Dust billowed up, a thick, choking gray fog. Alara didn't watch it land. She ran. She vaulted over a bench, her bare feet slapping against the cold marble, slipping on the debris. Her lungs burned. Her vision was a tunnel of red static. Thump thump. Thump thump. She checked her watch. 192 BPM. Not enough, she gasped, forcing her legs to pump harder, faster. She needed terror. She needed the breaking point. Secure the perimeter. Victor's voice roared from the dust cloud. He was alive. Of course he was alive. Cockroaches survived the apocalypse. Bullets chipped the stone pillar next to her head. Zip. Crack. Alara dove down the stairs toward the subway tracks. She didn't have a plan. She had a heart rate to spike. She sprinted along the platform, the adrenaline turning her blood into fire. There. A laser dot swept across her back. She spun around. 3 mercenaries blocked the stairs. Victor limped through them, his face masked in blood and dust, his suit torn. He looked feral. Desperate. Nowhere to run, little node, Victor panted, raising a tranquilizer pistol. The game ends now. Alara backed up. Her heels hung over the edge of the platform. The third rail hummed below. Do it, she taunted, her chest heaving. Shoot me. She looked at her watch. 198 BPM. Victor fired. The dart hit her shoulder. A pinch. Then, a cold wave spreading down her arm. Grab her. Victor commanded. Before the sedative stops her heart. I need the extraction now. The mercenaries surged forward. They tackled her, pinning her to the dirty concrete. Alara didn't fight them. She stared at the ceiling, feeling the drug war with the adrenaline. Get the kit. Victor screamed, dropping to his knees beside her. He pulled a portable transfusion line from his jacket. He was shaking. His skin was gray, his veins bulging. He was crashing. I need the blood. Connect us. Direct line. One of the men ripped the sleeve of her dress. He found a vein. He shoved the needle in. Alara gasped. The pain was sharp, immediate. Victor jammed the other end of the line into his own arm. He sighed, a sound of pure, gluttonous relief. Finally, Victor whispered, his eyes rolling back in ecstasy. Immortality. Alara looked at her watch one last time. 205 BPM. No, father, she whispered, her voice slurring from the sedative. It's an execution. The blood moved through the tube. Dark. Oxygen-rich. Carrying the inverted protein. It hit Victor's bloodstream in 3 seconds. His eyes snapped open. He didn't scream. He couldn't. His body went rigid, arching off the floor like a bow being drawn to the breaking point. The veins in his neck turned black, then purple. Foam bubbled at his lips, not white, but pink. The cure wasn't healing him. It was rewriting his genetic code with a command to self-terminate. Sir? The mercenary loosened his grip on Alara. Sir? Victor convulsed once. Violent. Final. Then he collapsed onto Alara's chest. Dead. His eyes were wide open, staring at nothing, frozen in a look of absolute betrayal. The mercenary scrambled back, horrified. He's gone, one stammered. Alara shoved the corpse off her. She sat up, ripping the 4-line from her arm. Blood sprayed onto the concrete. The sedative was making the world spin, but she forced herself to stand. She swayed. She looked at the mercenaries. 10 armed men who had just watched their paycheck die in 5 seconds. Leave, Alara said. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was the voice of the person who had just killed the devil with her own blood. The police are 2 minutes out, she said, gesturing to the sirens wailing above ground. Victor is dead. The checks will bounce. Run. They looked at the body. They looked at her. They ran. Alara stood alone on the platform. She looked down at Victor Sterling. You wanted my legacy, she whispered to the dead man. You choked on it. 3 months later. The boardroom of Echo Enterprises was silent. The long obsidian table was polished to a mirror shine. The city of New York lay sprawled below the 60-story window, a kingdom of lights. Alara Vance sat at the head of the table. She wore a suit cut from white silk. Sharp. Immaculate. Her hair was pulled back, revealing the faint scar on her temple where the stress had almost broken her. The acquisition is complete, Ms. Vance, the lawyer said, sliding a thick document across the table. You have successfully purchased the assets of Thorne Industries and Vance Global. And the previous owners? Alara asked, not looking up from her tablet. Julian Thorne is, in a long-term care facility. The neurotoxin caused permanent motor function damage. He can blink. That's about it. Alara didn't smile. She didn't frown. She felt nothing. And the charges against my father? Dropped post-mortem. He is cleared of all fraud. The narrative is that he was a whistleblower who died protecting the market. Good. Alara signed the document. The pen scratched loudly in the quiet room. She stood up and walked to the window. She was 22 years old. She was worth $15 billion. She owned the algorithm that ran the world economy. And she was completely, utterly alone. She pulled out her phone. The screen was new, uncracked. She opened her messages. She scrolled down to a contact saved as a dad. The last message from him was the one he never sent. The draft she found in the cloud. I'm sorry, I couldn't be the father you needed. I had to be the monster to keep the other monsters away. Alara typed a reply. I won, Dad. I bought the company. I burned the bad guys. I saved the legacy. She hesitated. Her thumb hovered over the send button. She looked at her reflection in the glass. Her eyes were blue, like Marcus's. But the shape, the cold, predatory intelligence behind them, that was Victor. She was a hybrid. A titan made of love and cruelty. She deleted the text. Instead, she typed 5 words. I am on my own. She hit send. She turned off the screen, turned her back on the city, and walked out of the room. The door clicked shut, leaving the world behind.